People are already flying in.
So
Jack's already in Colorado. He's in the U.S. He's bouncing all around the world to try to get down to Nashville.
Jack McNaughton's on a USA tour to get to Nashville this week. He's touring, man. Oh, this is amazing. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys being here. Today, the big topic that we want to get into is one that may be familiar to some of you guys, especially if you guys have been in just the self-improvement space as a whole. And it's pulled directly from some teachings of Jocko Willink, which I know for my life personally has helped me a ton. And it's his concept of discipline equals freedom and how you actually live that out in your day-to-day life. So I think this is something that for all of you guys here and all of you guys watching the recording can relate to this in some capacity, especially going through this program. So I'm very, very excited to dive into this. It's going to be great to chat with all of you guys about it and get your feedback. So Jack and Gabe, opening up with this topic, what does that statement mean to you guys?
I mean, I think first you have to consider, what is freedom to you? Freedom tends to be, a little bit different for everyone. Everyone has a little bit different goals, a little bit different visions for their life. And at the end of the day, how you get to that end goal, that end vision, that freedom that you imagine in your mind, the route is discipline. The route is through doing the hard things just on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, things that you need to do, but some days you don't want to do them at all. Discipline. So I love that. I love the saying. I love Jocko. And I think it's an essential, mental model to have, to realize that you're not going to want to show up some days, but you must, if you want freedom, if you want the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I think the significant thing about that phrase, discipline equals freedom, it's that it's completely counterintuitive. If you have an inappropriate definition of freedom, you brought up a really great point, Jack. What does freedom mean to you? I think most people in this day and age have a perverted definition of freedom. Most people think perverse, disgusting. Most people think freedom means do whatever you want, right? And I don't think it's just a societal issue in this day and age. This is part of just the human condition, right? Do whatever I want, do as I please, do whatever my next impulse commands me to do. That's what most people picture when they think of freedom. But you get to a point where you realize that freedom isn't necessarily being able to just do whatever your impulse commands you to do whenever you want to. Freedom is not being held back by something. Freedom is not being restricted in between where you are now and reaching your goals. Freedom is not being weighed down by your inadequacies or your lack of discipline or any other factor in your control. Freedom is your ability to reach your potential. So when you get really clear on the actual definition of freedom, then this makes a lot more sense. It's extremely obvious that if you're not disciplined, there's going to be outcomes that hold you back from reaching your goal.
You don't have freedom if you don't have discipline. You can't choose the good outcome that you want. You can't choose to be fit. You can't choose to make a lot of money because you don't have the discipline. Therefore, you have no freedom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think
so
go ahead, Gabe.
Expanding on this idea, this concept is regularly expressed in our faith, where we talk about like being free in Christ. And what does that mean? How are we free in Christ if we have to do certain things and we don't do certain things? What that means is that when we are living in Christ, right, following those rules, so to speak, at a certain level, that we're no longer held back by our own sin. So having this idea that freedom is the state of not being restricted by something you can control.
I think something as well that's worth mentioning is we talk a lot about default actions and how it makes things effortless for you guys. And one of the biggest things that makes effortless is the discipline, right? It absolutely is, because if it's something that you can weave into your life, if it's something that you can do without thinking about, and you make it like brushing your teeth, does it really require that much discipline to brush your teeth? It doesn't. So the way that you can make this, oh, Jack, does it for you, bro?
No,
I saw your face change. Wait a second.
It's not about brush my teeth. I promise I brush my teeth fine. It's not about that.
Whoa. Thought this was about brushing your teeth for a second.
No.
In fact, when
I do.
growing up
Very
as a
lucky the default action. I promise.
growing up as a kid, I somehow, I don't know how, I don't know why, but I believe that brushing your teeth twice a day was a scam growing up. So for my entire childhood, I only brushed my teeth once a day, just in the morning. And then when I was 19 or 20 years old, I was in the gym and I crunched down before a heavy rep and my tooth just completely shattered, turned to sawdust. And I didn't realize I had a cavity. But anyway, long story short, now I know brushing your teeth twice a day is in fact not a scam.
Yo,
That's super
that's
trad
wild.
of you.
Too much start saying.
That's wild, bro. That's super base. That's super trad, man.
No, it's not. That's not.
That's funny. But anyways, right? This whole concept that we always like to clarify, and Gabe, I would love for you to share your perspective too, that you shared at the client ascension event, right? On discipline and your take on that, because it is something that we can actually make these discipline tasks relatively effortless with default actions, with weaving them into your identity, with making them a part of things that you're grateful for, with things as simple as journaling. Right. So Gabe, I'd love for you to share that perspective with everybody as well, because I think it was eye-opening for the people there. And so I think it's something that could move these guys as well.
Yeah, totally, man. So what happened was Jack, myself, and Joey, we were invited to speak at the client event, client ascension meetup. It was a big mastermind of 100 entrepreneurs, 100 plus entrepreneurs. And we were speaking on a panel of how to stay fit as a busy entrepreneur. And one of the points that I brought up was that when I walked into this event, they had basically a wall of snacks, right? Of like donuts and muffins and cookies and all this other fun stuff that, people kind of mindlessly just grab as soon as they walk in. And I asked the crowd a question. And the question was, do you think that it took discipline for me to walk in to the doors of the event and walk past the cookies? And there was no answer from the crowd. Somewhat of a
So I'm painting some cabinets, and we were using a brush, and we were seeing.
beautiful.
Oh, we were going to be talking about discipline when you're painting cabinets. Honestly,
I know. I was ready for the just food discipline.
I default to up down painting.
Like, how is he gonna tie this in? I don't know, but
He's like, I didn't want to paint these cabinets today.
I did not want to paint, and I defaulted to it.
Good stuff.
Good move,
Anyway,
Jacob. Good play.
the question was, did it require discipline to walk past the stand of snacks without binging on the snacks? Like, did anybody see me walk in and just like, oh, you got this, man, like discipline, like hardcore, like don't eat the snacks. Right? No, of course not. Not what happened. It didn't require any discipline to walk past the snacks. I walked past them like they weren't even there. And so the point that I think Joey's trying to highlight by bringing up this scenario is that you can almost make discipline obsolete in certain cases when you make those behaviors default actions, right? Discipline is referring to essentially your willpower, right? Your ability to push past when you actively don't want to do something, which is necessary, which is useful, which is going to separate the crappy from the average and the average from the great, right? But the reality is that for so many habits, it becomes even easier if you build them into your default actions. Because now I actually want to go to the gym, right? We talk about having the discipline to go to the gym, going even when you don't feel like it. How about when you make it a default action and you wake up every single day and you want to go to the gym? Mm-hmm. It's that much easier, right? So I think that's the point that Joey's trying to highlight, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important as well to connect them, right? Because I think it's totally reasonable to conclude that when you're first starting out, it is going to require discipline, right? Any change is going to require some level of discomfort. And I believe everybody here had their kickoff call with me. And one of the things we cover is that, right? Some change is going to be uncomfortable, right? It's going to require a layer of discipline when you're getting started. But with time and with repetition and ingraining this into who you are as a man and the identities that you hold about yourself, that is when it evolves into something that you default to. So I think it's important to make the connection as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I find myself using discipline more like sporadically, other than just something
Yeah.
that I have to do every single freaking day.
Yep.
Right? Like 9 days out of 10, wake up, I'm like, let's freaking go, let's lift. I'm so excited. Then that one day comes around, I'm like, oh, I don't really want to go. Got to exercise some discipline, still show up, keeps you consistent.
I think it's a interesting discipline has that connotation of it being very difficult, something very hard, something that you don't want to
Yeah.
do. And let's talk about like that balance of setting up default actions so it's easier, like setting up the environment in your house so you don't even have the junk food, so you don't have to exercise discipline in the first place.
Right.
Let's touch on that for a moment. What do you guys think about that balance?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is, I mean, everything that we teach in the default action installation system, from making it part of your self-identity to like auditing your inputs and curating your environment, that's what removes the need for discipline so much, right? That's what makes things default actions. So when you talk about the example of like monitoring or adjusting the environment in your house, right? Just never buying ice cream, so to speak, like never buying Ben and Jerry's at the grocery store, means you then won't have to even use discipline to prevent yourself from eating the ice cream that's in the freezer because it's not there in the first place, right? Your default action is buying yogurt and frozen fruit for dessert, right? Or something like that. So those are the big things that I think about, right? What are the things you can do with your inputs, with your environment, with how your subconscious mind functions through the journaling and the self-identity that remove the need for discipline in any situation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something there as well. I think also depends on like how much you eat, right? And, like how full you are, because I would say that would be a very different story if you were walking past that table when you were just really starving, right? You had like no food for the whole day. So I think also it's like comes down to getting that protein in, splitting it across the day. So you're never like in that starving situation where you're like, oh, I could just go for a quick McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Like, how are you positioning yourself, right? Are you putting yourself in a position where things are going to be inherently more difficult? Like if you're addicted to crack cocaine, are you still hanging out with crackheads, right? Now that's an extreme example, but let's make it a little bit more real. If you feel like you drink too much, are you still hanging out with the guys who all they do for fun is drink? Right? If you feel like you always overeat at the work events, are you having your protein shake for breakfast first thing in the morning so that you walk into that event satiated? Or are you making it harder than it needs to be?
100%. The positioning is huge, right? And those of you guys that are regulars in the nutrition calls or the recordings, like we talk about this all the time, right? You have this preparation. Gabe's example right there. It's like, if you know the work meeting is going to have a bunch of crap and donuts, well, let's get some protein in that morning. So one, you're not as hungry. Two, if you do decide to indulge a little bit, at least we know our bases are covered. So that's a big one as well, where you set yourself up for success before an event, before you even have the opportunity to exercise discipline. You can even take it away because you set yourself up beforehand.
Yeah, the answer is often making it easier. The
Right.
answer is not making it harder. Why starve yourself? Show up to somewhere starving when you could eat something to satiate yourself. Make it easier. Why have to force yourself to exercise extreme discipline every single day of your life? Because in your pantry 5 feet away, there's all this crap food. That's hard. I don't want to do that. That sounds extremely hard every single day. Let's make it easy.
1,000%. Where have you guys seen this tie into your experience so far here?
For me, it'd definitely be like recently, because I went through, like the past few weeks, I didn't like properly like rest or unwind from like a really heavy ministry kind of like event, right? And so it's like I came back and I was just like kept on going, well, to the best of my ability, but I was like exhausted. I didn't take the proper time to like mentally, spiritually, physically rest. And so I'm just kind of like down dog on myself every day. However, as I've kind of like found my way, kind of like found my footing again, it's like that entire time, I was still practicing what was instilled in me now, like subconsciously, with like eating, just kind of like my eating awareness levels were like much more in tune than they were like if this were to have happened like a year ago. I always say like a year ago because year ago me is so different from like present day me, even when I go through tough stuff, whether it be mentally or around me. And so it's like that right there is just a real immediate example, fresh example for me as to how like times were tough. I wasn't making a whole ton of decisions I wanted to, but my default actions, like they were still like, because of this whole program, they were still there. I was focusing on protein, like no doubt every time, like undeniable. So yeah, that's just a real life example for me. Even when things are tough, there's still things that are subconsciously instilled now because of this,
Boom. There you go. Do something long enough and it becomes, that autopilot default action where you're in the situation where you are tired. You are in the situation where you got all these other stressors, things going on in your life. You're going to fall back to what is that autopilot action that you just tend to do. All right. And those are like, the longer that you do this, the longer you commit to this journey, the more ingrained that is, the more automatic it is. So you can look at that like every single day that you stack that win, every single day you show up to your work, every single day that you eat the right foods, it's becoming a little bit easier, a little bit stronger, a little bit more on autopilot. So when that hard season of life comes, you're more and more and more prepared. That's another great way to look at it.
That's exactly it.
As well.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But I have a perfect example of like the preloaded protein. I think literally I've been traveling for like 24 hours now. I'm going to do another like 10 hours or so. And literally the night before traveling, I just had 100 grams of protein for dinner. And in the morning, 60 grams of protein. So I'm literally loaded up on protein. And because I know that even with these meals on the airplane, there's not much protein at all.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, this is very good stuff. And I think ultimately another way that we can frame this relation between default actions and discipline in your mind is the stronger your default actions are, the less you have to exercise discipline. It's as simple as that, right? But it's still a tool in your arsenal if you need it. It's absolutely there for you. But the further we ingrain these, the more diligent we are with the journaling, the more serious we are about ingraining the identities that we have, the deeper we ingrain these, the less you'll ever have to exercise the discipline. I think that is the big takeaway that I'm getting from this conversation as well. What are your guys' thoughts on that concept?
I mean, like that's 100% the case. It's a tool in the arsenal, and like even when, like when I was kind of like going through my season of that I was of like depression or whatever it was, just kind of like being off of my game. It was like, yeah, just constantly a tool underneath my belt, every day, and so yeah, I can agree with that. Full send.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I just got back from a Vegas trip with like some friends, and so everyone drinks there, and there's like they sell weed there. Two things that I used to love doing, and this trip I did none of that. I mean, I drank a little bit, like hanging out with like family stuff, gambling. The waitress coming like, yeah, I like a beer, but I limited it, And then like every meal is like protein first, every snack like Quest bar or protein shake. So like my discipline for those like 2.5 days were just like on point. And I think it really helped.
Yeah. And Austin, I'm curious to hear as well, like how would you rate your discipline level on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, did you have to go really, really hard on being disciplined, or was it something that's just so ingrained into who you are and something that you default to now? So while you're there, it's relatively simple.
It was pretty simple. I would say it's probably like a 5 or a 6. Like it's just simple to do, like just making better choices when we went out to eat and stuff, and just like skipping the beer, just not drinking at all, just hanging out, Yeah, it was like easy to do.
Man, if you're in Sin City and you only have to go 5 out of 10 discipline, I'd say that's pretty damn good on the default actions, brother.
Yeah.
Most people, when they don't have good default actions, got to go 11 out of 10 on discipline just to go to work without overeating, right? Just to wake up and not overeat. So the fact that you can go to literally the one city on earth that is designed for indulgence And only have to put forth a 5 out of 10 effort in terms of discipline is awesome. Is awesome. That shows that those
Thank you.
default are trained, right?
And,
Those
and
are
Austin's a
cool
great
about
example
that.
of how this just becomes a part of who you are. Right. He even went to a different environment. And like Gabe said, which I think we're underplaying, an environment that has literally been curated for decades to be as addictive and ruling on your discipline as possible. Right. And he still only exercised a 5 out of 10 on it. That's huge. That's massive. So that's a very, very good takeaway. Congrats, brother.
Thank you.
Another thing about this,
It was hard, but
is-
not that hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what
that's
we're
the
going.
coolest thing. Like with this trip, for example, what happens, another thing that happens is after it kind of raises your water level. I like to see it as, or your standard, your confidence. Conquer this trip. You know, you did the right things, you had the default actions on lock. And so you come off this trip raising your water like, oh, I did this. I went on this trip to Vegas and I conquered it. No big deal. So when the next obstacle comes up, the next trip comes up, you can look back to that and refer to that in your brain as concrete proof. I've already done this. So if I have to do something similar or even a little bit harder again, it's no big deal. I've already done it. I've raised that water line of what I can do, I can accomplish.
It's a standard, right? You've exposed yourself to an environment that's tested you to the max, right? It would test anybody to the max. So now when you find yourself in a situation that's not nearly as tempting as Las Vegas, it's going to seem so simple, right? And that's the good thing about this exposure that you had, right?
That's great. I think another point that I want to bring up in regards to discipline equals freedom that has served me well in my mind and has built the importance of default actions in my mind and the importance of making something part of your identity in my mind is the honest understanding that no matter how disciplined you can be, no matter how much willpower you have, no matter how hardcore you are, all willpower is fatiguing. Willpower is fatiguing, which means that, of course, people have varying levels of willpower, right? Like you've got the guys who just have zero willpower, right? Can't control themselves, just always looking for the next impulse, whether it's the phone or food or pornography or drugs or alcohol or whatever. And then you have guys like, Navy SEALs, right? Jocko Willink, right? David Goggins, right? Those guys who have what seems like extreme willpower. But no matter who you are, no matter how much willpower you have, there's always like a candle wick on that, so to speak, right? Like if you put yourself in a position to where you have to use all of your willpower, at some point that's going to run out and you're going to break. Right? At some point that's going to run out and you're going to break, which is why it's really important to keep in mind this idea that we've been talking about this entire time, that it is wise to make things as easy as possible. It is actually not wise to make things as hard as possible. There's some pride and there's some respect in doing hard things, so to speak, right? And there's going to be hard parts of everything that we do, but it is wise to set yourself up and position yourself in especially in the things that are important to you to make them as easy as possible. Right? The Bible talks about this idea of stumbling blocks, and I did a little bit of a 5th grade level of research here while somebody was but Romans 14:13 says, therefore let us not judge one another anymore, but rather determine this, not to put an obstacle or stumbling block in your brother's way. Right? Like the Bible's literally saying, like, don't make things harder on people, right? Like don't make it harder than it needs to be. Right? So I think that's really important. Don't ever overestimate how much willpower you have, because even if you might have a lot, there's still a wick on the end of that candle.
And I'm a huge proponent, and I know a lot of guys here are huge proponents of engaging in intentional discomfort, right? I think that's a massive philosophy and something that a lot of people should apply. But to Gabe's point, engaging in intentional discomfort is not making sure that your freezer is stocked with Ben and Jerry's week to week. That's not intentional discomfort. That is temptation, right? That is temptation. It's a different ball game. So
Trying to
I'll
be
make sure
faithful to
that,
Beyonce, so I go to strip clubs every weekend.
right. Exactly. It's like, right, let's make sure we actually calculate what this is. So it's important to not get those skewed, right? When it comes to the day-to-day and actually sticking to the default actions, it's gonna be a whole lot easier for you to eat clean when you eliminate the stuff that's bad. When you eliminate the stuff that before you got here was holding you back and holding you by your throat, right? The potato chips, the stuff in your pantry that you know is not good, the stuff that you're marching to between your Zoom calls throughout the day, right? So there's a difference and there's a fine line between engaging in intentional discomfort and setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting when we talk about this idea of engaging in intentional discomfort. Every time we do that, it's setting up some practice or opportunity that's going to require discipline, discomfort, right?
Mhm.
That ultimately moves us forward. Like it's going to require discipline to finish the fitness challenges that we have at the retreat this weekend. It's going to require discipline, right? There's going to be moments where everybody's like, you know what? I no longer want to continue doing this. And you have to
Yeah.
continue doing it. But continuing to do it is helping you. It's moving you towards your goals, right? Don't position yourself for intentional discomfort in something that would harm you, right? If you somehow failed, like putting ice cream in your freezer or going to, you know, a strip club every weekend if you're in a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very good distinction to make there while we're on this topic.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you guys have any questions that come up when it comes to this topic of intentional discomfort versus setting it up for success, setting things up easily for you to succeed? Any questions come to mind with these topics?
I guess more of a statement. This past week, as this actually call is pretty timely for me because this past weekend, kind of going through Hell Week right now. And you know, part of that was dopamine and the kind of wanting to eat foods, all this stuff. And I ended up, Saturday I was at a buddy's place for his like daughter's birthday. So when I was alone in the house, no issue. Like discipline wasn't a problem. I was perfectly content. And then going to his house and you have people offering you drinks for 3 hours straight. And then Sunday I have relatives in town, March in Arizona. Everybody comes to Arizona for spring training, so like every weekend I had someone else in town. And so we go out to dinner and I'm trying to basically make my own menu item that fits with what I was trying to do. And then you start getting comments from family and friends like, oh, is this like new programs like making you weird and all this, the comments like that are, things that I look at as something that is making myself a much better person and much more positive and much more, leading towards my goals. And then the inputs around me from family and friends are like, it's making you weird. So that it took a lot of discipline to continue to push forward and stay on track with the plan. And literally Saturday and Sunday, I left the party Saturday and the dinner Sunday and went to the gym. And from like 9:30 until like 11:30 at night, I was at the gym, just because it was like, trying to get my mind back straight after trying to defend myself for 2 days, So this is a timely conversation.
Drew, man, if I could tell you the amount of times and the amount of comments I got when I drop out of college in the middle of my third year with a guaranteed seat to a doctor of physical therapy program. Every time I go home, man, what are you doing? That's weird. These guys you met on the internet are making you weird.
Yeah.
How often does that happen? I know Drew's not the only one that's gone through that, right? I experience this when I go back to Ohio and I see friends from high school, right? That's a classic one. They're like, man, you changed. You're different. You're doing things a different way, right? It's because these people tie you to the identity that they knew you as.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not there by your side as you're going through this transformation, right? The only people in my life that when I go home don't label me as how I used to be or don't talk to me about how much I've changed is my dad and my grandpa, because I talk to them every single week and they've been side by side with me through the entire thing, right? So something that's helped me in my own journey of just growing as a man and making this transition out of, the traditional route has been giving these people grace because they don't see everything that's going on. And it's a really hard frame to take. And it's a really hard thing to reverse because you know how much this is impacting you. You know how positively your life has evolved by making these changes, but you also see every single second of it.
Yeah.
You're with yourself every single change you make and they aren't, right? And it's a difficult thing to deal with because I've had to deal with it in my personal life as well. So I can totally relate to that. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can as well. And Drew, I appreciate you sharing that. Is anybody else willing to share some steps that they've taken, because I know Drew is not the only one that has gone through this with people in their circle saying, man, you changed, man, this is weird. What's up with this cult you joined, bro? What's up with these cultish tendencies that you have now? You're walking around shirtless with a nose strip and barefoot in the afternoon. What's going on? So who else is willing to share some strategies that they've used or some mindset shifts that they've had when they go through a situation like this, like Drew is?
I think for me, the biggest thing is just show them the results, right? Like, just if you show them that you lost the weight, like even like before and after pics, if you're willing to show them that, then they'll have they can't argue with you. I had the exact same like problem with like when I started this program, we didn't actually have any money to actually start at the very start, and kind of earned it along the way. Is that people are saying like, what are you doing? It's a waste of money. This is a scam. You're wasting your time. Then after like 6 weeks in, everyone's mindset shifted, and they said it's the best money they've ever spent. So I think it's literally just showing them the proof, and also just explaining like what's happening right as well. Could be useful.
Show the receipts. Show
Receipts.
the receipts.
Receipts.
Yeah, Drew, I think that's where my mind went as well, Jack. You brought that up as we were talking about the situation. Is the long term, the best strategy I've seen that kind of silences doubters, so to speak. Not doubters, that's not who they are, but they're doubting a specific action that you're taking. They love you, right? Overall.
Yeah.
Is silencing the doubts that comes from people that love you, I should say, is showing them the receipts. Just becoming so undeniably great, so undeniably different that they have no option but to conclude that you were right all along, right? Like a classic example is Jack literally showing people the transformation pictures. They're like, oh, shoot, I'm wrong.
Yo, I'm going to lose 100 pounds in a what's up? Like that's what's about to happen for Jack.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Jack
crazy.
is walking around now as a receipt. He doesn't have to do anything. He just walks in a room. Receipt.
Undeniably, it's so undeniably, he's so undeniably different that the very existence of him in other people's lives shifts their worldview. It shifts their perception of reality, right? So now they're looking at you thinking, you did it right. I'm weird, right? This is something that happened with Jack and I's old friends from high school who we recently met up with, where throughout the first years of us starting our business and dropping out, of course, same thing that kind of Joey went through with, man, you guys are weird. What are you doing? Y'all don't drink on Fridays anymore, blah, blah, blah. Of course, 4 years later, we invite them over to our place and it's, man, you guys are crushing it. Man, you guys built this thing. Man, this is amazing. Undeniably did the right thing. Undeniable receipts, shifted their worldview. One of them even saying, man, I wish I did what you guys did. Shifting their worldview just purely off results, right? The other thing, I talked to Matt more about this weekend, because this is a conversation that often comes up with any people who are in any kind of self-development like path, whether it be their health and their fitness and their business and anything, right? I was talking to Matt more about this, and the conclusion that we come to is that if we think about it, we are weird. Okay, we are weird. I always say,
he stole my frame shift. I taught him that one. He took credit for that. I told him that.
I brought it up on Saturday. Hey now. So anyway, but we all have this idea of we are the weirdos. Like that's just the truth. And you have to have the perspective that the normal people aren't normal isn't necessarily good. Right? Like that's the way I look at it. Like normal isn't necessarily good. So yes, we are technically weird. We're technically the minority. We're technically the odd ones out. But I'd rather be the odd ones out because normal isn't good. Right? I'm the guy who is weirdly disciplined when it comes to my health and fitness. I'm the guy who is weirdly obsessed with building my business that's providing all this financial prosperity and all this impact for the people I love. I'm the guy who is weirdly strong at jujitsu and naturally is able to take down guys who've been doing it for 2.5 years, like Joey.
Yeah.
Got him.
You'd sneak that in there.
But we are weird. We're all weird. But I like being normal isn't good.
Man. I'm so glad you said that so well. I communicated it so well to Matt, and I'm glad that he just took credit for it and you were able to, put it down the line and claim it as Matt's, even though he got it from me. But it's great. It's fine. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But that is the shift.
Yeah,
Jack,
I'll take it a step further. when you get the small comments, see that as validation. You see, you would not get the small comments if you didn't change in the first place. We're all here for a reason. We want to change. We want to grow. We want to be a different man. And so if you never got the comment in the first place, it means you're the same person. They didn't notice a change.
Yeah.
So when you
That's
do
good.
get the comments, that literally means there is proof that you are different. Something about you is changing. So it's
Mhm.
validation that it's working, it's happening,
Mhm.
it's going on.
And I think
Good.
for me, where I came to this conclusion, actually I was talking to Joel when I came to this conclusion of like, we're the weird ones. I don't know if it's some frontal lobe development here as I get closer to the 25-year-old mark, but it used to be I used to get mad at people that said that, right? Like I used to be like, man, like, I don't know what you're talking about, bro. And now my frame has shifted to just giving them grace. It's like, they don't mean ill when they make those comments. A lot of those comments I got were from people that I love and I know love me. It's not an ill thing, right? It's they're stuck in their lens and they don't even know that they are. And what's given me a lot of peace is that, right? I've been able to say like, it's okay if they make those comments and stuff, because they literally don't have the perspective. They don't know. It's like ignorance is bliss, right? They're literally just ignorant to the situation. And so being able to give them grace and accept the fact that, yes, I am the weird one, right? And that's okay. Because you know what normal is today? You know what average is today? It's broke, depressed, overweight, obese even, right? That is averages and normals. Like we can run numbers on this and see that over half of people fall into all of those categories. And it's sad, but the silver lining in it is you guys have found a room of people that want no piece of that.
Yeah.
And I can speak from personal experience. The thing that has kept me on the path of being different is surrounding myself with people that want to do the exact same thing. And it's very, very rare to find that. And that is the conclusion that me, Jack, and Gabe came to when we decided that we wanted to go balls to the wall on making the community aspect of this service as good as humanly possible. Not just the one-on-one getting in shape coaching, but the community. Because we know how incredibly rare it is to find people that actually want to go on this mission with you and want to grow. Because most people don't like discomfort. And what did I say earlier? Any kind of change is going to require a layer of discomfort. That's why most people stay where they are. That is why you change and get comments for changing from people that haven't changed.
Another great perspective that I'll think through that helps me deal with the situation. People making comments, people saying you're weird, people saying it doesn't seem like something you do, waste of money, cult, whatever. Is the understanding that all the nicknames, right?
Classic. Yeah.
Classic. Is the understanding that mammals view novelty as a threat. Anytime mammals see anything that's new or unrecognizable, they view it as a threat. They go on high alert, right? They discovered this during this study where they were trying to figure out, like, do predatory, like lions or some predatory animal, actually pick on the weakest, like zebra in the herd? Like, do they actually pick the weakest zebra in the herd? And so the test that they set up was they would paint like one of the zebras red, right? Like they just painted it red. And what they found is that lions wouldn't attack the weakest, slowest zebra. They would attack the zebra with the red paint, the one that stood out, the one that was new, right? The one that was different. And so anytime you are perceived as new, different, or weird than the crowd, people are going to view you as a threat, right? Their eyes are going to be like, that guy's weird, that's different, let's take him down, right? So understanding that we are going to stick out like a sore thumb because we're not fat, broke, depressed, men, boob, hate our lives, 29 genders and all the rest. We have to understand that we are going to stick out and people are going to call us out and say that, hey, you're weird. Hey, you scare me. Hey, this frightens me. I want to take you down. That's not normal, right? Mammals view novelty as a threat.
Okay. So lesson is you get the comments. She's like, I get it, man. You're just a mammal. I get it.
This is a biological response, bro. It's cool.
I understand. I
get
understand.
it.
I understand why you don't want me to drop out of college and start a business. It's a biological response. I'm like the red zebra. I get it, Mom.
You just whip out that story. You're like,
Just
"Son,
have that
where's the
on
details?"
deck, bro. Have it on deck. But no, this is very good. Drew, I'm glad you brought that up. Sent us into a can of worms there, but I was passionate about it. You had me fired up in here because like I can totally relate to it. I totally relate to it. I'm going through it now. Right. Just kind of coming out to the other side of it. But I know it's not going to be the last time it happens because I don't plan on stopping growth.
I think it's important to highlight too that I know I think maybe like half the guys in here right now are in relationships, if I kind of remember off the top of my head correctly. But I've never seen this occurrence be softer with a significant other. If anything, I've seen it be more intense with significant others, especially with women, because women, they ultimately like they want that sense of security and predictability in their men, right? Although they want their men to be the best men they can be, it's almost like scary, even when a man is ascending, because it's different, it's unpredictable, right? That's a threat. So I know personally in my relationship, and I've heard in so many other men's relationships, that sometimes it's the wife, sometimes it's the closest person to you, the person who actually loves you the most, the person who would actually lay her life down for you, that's saying, this is weird. What are you doing? This is different. These actions that you're taking are out of alignment with the identity that I knew you as for the last 20 years. They have 20 years, they have decades of evidence that have allowed them to predict your next behavior. And all of a sudden that's changing. So having some grace for the people who are really close to you, who might be saying, this is weird, what you're doing is weird, right? Because they've built their reality, they've built their future dreams on the fact that you're probably going to act a certain way. And all of a sudden that's changing. So having that grace for them, looking at it through that lens.
And I think that was a conversation for me that I had with my mother, because my mom was the one that was definitely most suspect on this whole thing. My mom also is not on the interwebs. So my dad is. So he'd followed along the whole journey from the very, very beginning. My mom is like, what is this internet stuff? What are you doing? Right. And finally having that conversation with her and acknowledging the fact that, hey, mom, I understand that this makes you incredibly uncomfortable. And I understand that you love me to death and you want the best for me. But here's why I'm doing X, Y, Z. And I'm probably going to do some more stuff in the future that's going to make you go, what are you doing? Because of the path that I'm on. It's not normal. And for me, sitting down with her and openly acknowledging her discomfort was a conversation that really started to clear the air and move us in a better direction. To now we're at a place where there's nothing suspect about it. Right. She's like, oh yeah, you're just doing your thing. Right. I don't know about that, Joey, but you're doing your thing. It's okay. And so I think as difficult as it might be, because there's so many people that you could have this conversation with, there's hundreds of people that view you through an old identity that you used to have in their mind. When you can have these conversations, especially with the people close to you, and simply acknowledge that you understand why they feel the way they do, that has opened the room and cleared the air for me multiple times.
That's good.
Another way to flip it on its head, take up the example. If I started drinking every single night, going out to bars, you think Joey and Gabe would not have a reaction to that? Would they not make a small comment? All right, that is outside of their expectations of me. So of course that would warrant a comment.
Small comment, bro. I would be knocking on your door.
All right, you do something crazy. You get the point. You get the point. So it's only normal. It's only to be expected that when you change, good or bad, people around you are going to make a comment. They're noticing something that they're not used to that.
I'm not saying anything.
Oh,
I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I don't know.
All I'm saying is Jack's point is so accurate. I thought it was funny that you made that point. Like, it's so accurate that I didn't think it would need to be like this extreme thing for us to make small comments. Like, it could be one little, silly thing for us to be like, yo, you okay, bro? Like, it's a little
crazy.
That's insane.
Our friend group too is crazy. Like, it's funny, like, especially you guys that are coming to Nashville and like come to retreats in the future, like you're going to see this like very intimately, right? Because like an example of this is like me and Matt, like went out for the first time in like 4 months. And there's just comments flying, right? One time in 4 months, and you just don't hear the end of it. But that's the standard we hold ourselves to. And when you find yourself in an environment of people that also have that standard and hold you to that, it's going to be very simple for you to stay on the path. And it does become weird when you stray off of it. And I'm blessed to have that, right? I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm glad I'm getting chirps for going out to a bar for the first time in 4 months, right? So it's super good example, Jack.
Another option is
I wanted.
my
I actually had a.
go
if
ahead.
I
Go
may,
ahead.
I really want to add this because
Go
I don't
ahead.
want to
I was
move
gonna
on from
make a
this
silly
topic,
joke.
but-
I was just gonna jab at the guys, but go ahead.
It was going to talk
Oh,
crap.
I was purely
Really?
going to talk shit. Go ahead. You're probably gonna say something valid.
perhaps something about Jack in the barefoot shoes again.
Ooh.
But but the thing I wanted to bring up was, and this is something I'm kind of like working with right now is, the line between, like, I don't want that to make me cocky, like arrogant, what you guys are talking about. I mean, like, yes, 100%. Like when people say like, oh, Daniel's like the health food guy now, like I've gotten that now, it's just like, oh, Daniel is like paid people money to like better his life. And he can actually like help other people now with that skill. Like that's really cool stuff. And then the side stuff, like, that, I mean, that all kind of builds me up, but like, I feel like there can be a point where that can turn into arrogance and cockiness. And that's something that my family has told myself directly. It's just like, hey, you got to make sure you're not coming across like holier than thou or anything like that, And so that's something that I'm kind of like working with right now. Not that I have really honestly felt that that's been my intent at all, but I guess when you're living around your family members long enough, they can kind of pick up on little things that may send different signals that you never intended. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me, and it's something that's really important to me, because I would never want to come across as arrogant or cocky, so to speak, or even just feel that way myself. But what I realize is that the difference between arrogance / cockiness and actual confidence is if that confidence is based on something that's actually happened in reality versus just a notion of yourself that is false and based on nothing, right? Like cockiness would be somebody coming into the jiu-jitsu gym and being like, I can take anyone, right? I can see red who's never trained. Confidence would walking in and being like, I've submitted everybody here. I can handle myself. Like I can do that. That's based on fact, right? Cockiness would be, I'm the health freak, I know how to get anyone as strong as humanly possible, even though, maybe you've only deadlifted 250 pounds. Confidence is, hey, I've lost a certain amount of fat. I've built a certain amount of muscle. I can advise people on doing that thing. That's confidence. So as long as everything that you're teaching people, telling people, helping people with is based on actual tasks that you've executed yourself, that itself is confidence. As soon as you have preconceived notions about yourself that aren't based in truth, that's arrogance. That's cockiness.
Yep. Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm right there with you guys, with you on that, because it's like, I always, try and do my best, but maybe sometimes I kind of miss the mark, on occasion. We're all human, so we're all learning. But yeah, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. The only time confidence turns into arrogance is when there's no competence to back it up. Right?
That's a good one.
That's
right.
a quote.
It's a
That's a
quote.
tweet.
Put it on a wall. Put it on a wall for me. No, but this is funny. And I think about it. I'm going to think about it from a business perspective as well. It's like you guys see us post testimonials and screenshots and all this stuff all the time, because it actually shifts the lens at which people take our advice through. Obviously, it's marketing, of course, but it also shifts the lens at which people take our advice from. If we didn't have that in the timeline all the time and constantly posting proof and people we work with and things going on inside of the community, our word would hold no weight because you haven't done anything, right? We've actually done stuff and you have receipts to prove it. And you have a pile of receipts that says, I did this, 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 and this, and this, and this is why I can talk about this. Everybody listens differently. 100% of the time. That's why somebody that's never worked with any human being ever in fitness, if they were to go and copy and paste Jack, Gabe, and I's tweets onto a brand new account, they could do that for a year and they wouldn't go anywhere. They could copy and paste the exact same thing, but it's the who that's different. They haven't done anything. They have no receipts. They have no competence to back up the confidence and the claims that they're making. Right. So it's the same thing with this confidence stuff as well.
It's really interesting because I think there's a fine line between like self-belief and arrogance.
Yeah.
Right. Like self-belief and arrogance. Like I believe I'm capable of XYZ. that can turn into arrogance really quickly.
Super fast.
Right, really quickly.
Super fast.
So I mean, I think like even if you're predicting like future success, like it still has to be based on something. There still has to be some track record, right? Like I believe that we can build this business to this number based on the fact that we've gotten it this far. Okay, cool. You haven't done it yet, but there's a track record there. It's based on nothing. If there's no foundation to that thought, then you're just.
And it's not binary either, right? That's the other thing as well. It's not like all in, all out. There's a sliding scale here that you fall upon as well, because I'm of the belief that you should lean closer to delusional self-belief than the opposite of like no self-belief at all, no anything, right? I'm a proponent of that. You guys have seen me talk about it in content, probably talk about it here. So like growing up, my dad poured into me some borderline delusional self-belief, right? But I'm better for it. Right. So there's a sliding scale too. It's not just all in, all out.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely much more rational to be irrational in your self-belief than to be rational in your self-belief.
Yeah.
I think the big lesson here is that there's a lot more evidence for us to believe that we're capable of a lot greater things than we might think. Like if you're thinking like, man, I can't lead anyone around me. Like I can't lead anyone in my family into similar habits and a similar lifestyle that I've built. I would say that there's plenty of evidence to believe that you could, just based on purely your identity, like just based on the fact that God created you. Like that's enough for me to believe that you're capable of leading those around you. So even if you have no experience doing that, and even if you have made a lot of mistakes in your past before, you weren't able to lead yourself before, I think it's not irrational. It's not arrogant to say that you're capable of leading those around you.
100%. Do you guys have any other comments or any questions that you'd like to wrap this up with for tonight?
I just want to say something. I think there's a difference between imposing your beliefs and the way you live your life onto people and then leading them. So I think that's like a mistake a lot of people make is when you discover all these new things like the ice baths and like the protein and the workout stuff. You want to just impose it onto the person, but like it's pretty big commitment coming to this program. Not everyone's going to want to make it. Everyone's going to want to change their life as much as you. So often I find I go out and do it. I lose the weight, right? Like 85 pounds or whatever. And then they come to me. Just like, oh, how'd you do that? Like, what did you do here and here? And that's, I feel like for me, at least, that's the best way I've helped people is that they've come to me. Because the thing is, like, when you give out advice, people don't want it. You're just wasting your time because they're not going to take it. But when they're listening to you and then when they want the advice, they hang on to every single word that you say. And you also got to think about the way you frame the advice as well. It's like you got to make sure that you try to apply it to them rather than just using your own experiences as well.
Yeah, and it's like I've actually received questions and such like that from friends, colleagues and such. But when it comes to family, it's just been a different atmosphere. Just because, I think I just can get a little overzealous. I think that's my big thing. I can get really excited about the stuff I'm really excited about. Just kind of natural.
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna leave. I'll wrap this up with one more thought that helps me conceptualize this. This one might be a little bit harsh, so maybe Jack or Joe, you want to bring it up on a high note after I say this. This is an idea in business I think translates to the situation perfectly. The idea in business is something I got from Andy Frisella, and it was from some podcast that he was giving. And what he said was that if you're it was Alex Hormozy, sorry. They were both in a podcast together. Alex Hormozy said that if you're having trouble finding new customers, it's because your product is not good enough. If your product was good enough, you wouldn't have trouble finding new customers. So the way I see that translating here is that if you're having trouble with people picking up what you put down, it's because the product isn't good enough. You haven't built yourself good enough yet. And if you wouldn't have a problem with people coming to ask you for help. So it's kind of humbling, right? I'll leave it with with that. You guys want to lift it up and bring us on out of here?
I don't think we need to lift it up. I just think that's good. I like it, man. I like the ball drop right there. Just boom.
Ooh. Yeah, that's good.
That's your one-liner for the night, bro. That's very good. That's very, very good. Jack, you have anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
No, let's leave it on that.
I'm in. I'm down.
Sorry,
Well,
guys.
gentlemen, as always. Yeah. Thanks, Gabe. Way to make it sad at the end, bro. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Guys, as always, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you taking the time. It's always fun. We always see some familiar faces here. So it's great to continue to build this connection and continue to sharpen one another. The entire premise of this call on Mondays is in the title. It's iron sharpens iron, right? It's a motto that Jack, Gabe, and myself live by, and we see it bleeding into your guys' experience here. So continue to make these a part of what you do and how you utilize this program. And we highly encourage you guys, if there are people that you see inside of the community that you don't feel like are taking advantage of this opportunity to be here, reach out to them and be that friend that says, I'll go to the call with you on Monday, right? We encourage you to be that guy, because that is how we all get better. So we love you guys. We appreciate you being here. And as always, feel free to continue this conversation in the chat and lead these other gentlemen. Iron does sharpen iron. So we love you guys. Have an amazing night. And for some of you, if I don't see you between now and Nashville, I will see you in Nashville.
Love y'all. See you soon.
Have a good week, guys.